Is it possible to use yoga to improve mental health? Can mindful yoga help us in our minds and change everything? Here's the way to make it work for you. We often have our own story, our own life story that makes us who we are. And we talk about that, we feel that, our past and our future and where we're going. So I mean it's story in a symbolic sense, the story of you. So by exploring that story or who we are, we have an opportunity. We can move beyond what we don't want. And in that way, we can identify the blocks in ourselves, in our story, see where we want to go instead of focus on what we don't want. And then we can focus on implementing a plan to get there. But we often find that it can be hard to change, hard to grow, hard to be happy even sometimes. But by understanding where we are, we can move forward. In that way, one of the most important things is to understand how we distort reality. And it's good to understand how we can change things, we can distort things, we can view things in a way that is not real. Remember, just because you think it, just because you feel it, doesn't mean it's true. We can live in beliefs and opinions instead of reality. We can interpret information and give it extra meaning instead of see things as they really are. We can be biased by our mental approach. But freeing ourselves from that leads to happiness. We can mentally filter things. We can conveniently delete a fact if it serves us. We can get caught up in extreme white or black thinking that can often lead to intense emotions and behavior. It's either right or it's wrong. There's no shades of gray. You can't put life in those boxes. We can take one instant from the past and assume that all futures instances will follow that same pattern. And that can lead to jumping to conclusions or making negative interpretations and predictions when there's no real evidence to support that. We also sometimes can take a fairly minor event and completely blow it out of proportion. We can take things personally even when it's not intended. We can see it as if everything is a personal, direct attack or make it about us. Some people have even gotten caught up in being the victim and learning to be helpless. And what that's about is excessive pity or sympathy when it comes to reflecting on past traumas and experiences. We can blame other people for our problems and our actions and thoughts instead of taking responsibility and empowering ourselves to change. We can confuse feelings with facts, mistake beliefs and opinion for truth, label ourselves and others. We can get caught up in rigid rules that don't serve us. We can minimalize what's important to us or over-emotionalize situations. Our mental patterns can control us, and the ways in which they can control us is virtually infinite. We're talking about telling our story, our life story, and then going beyond that. All of those things are examples of ways in which we limit ourselves, and by overcoming them, we can have a better approach to life. We can achieve things that are worth achieving and truly experience happiness. So that's the goal here. The goal of yoga mental health is about practicing a better way. It naturally leads there. So when we practice, we purify our mind and our body, which can lead to these things simply disappearing, to them going away. Now, you should make plans to manage these responsibilities, to look at all of these aspects. Be honest with yourself and how we can distort things. However, I'm talking about the hidden mental healing qualities of yoga. If your body is less stressed, you are less stressed. If you engage in knowledge that leads to truth, you're no longer living in ignorance and suffering. If you look to the wisdom traditions and the great minds of the world, they'll tell you what is helpful and what's not. So here is how yoga helps you get rid of mental garbage. There's many ways to grow and to improve, but the most powerful way is by changing your mind. So you can change what you do, and you can change what you say, and you can change your body, and that's great. For example, physical yoga practice can be amazing, but not even because that improving the body is so great, because physical practice is intelligently designed to lead to you finding yourself. If you find a competent teacher who really understands how to guide people in that sense to find themselves, then it'll lead to something greater. Where does it lead? It leads within. And it's about taking full responsibility for yourself and your mind. So, changing your mind is the powerful way to change. And physical practice, changing your actions, your words, all of that is good, but it has to lead to you taking responsibility for everything, which includes your mental routines and patterns. That's why we're talking about it. So, how do you do that? The two main themes are self-control and inquiry. What is that, and how does it work? Self-control, discipline, is often thought of as hard. Working, some people feel, is hard. And there's truth in that because you lift yourself up by your own efforts, right? No one can chew your food for you. No one can sleep for you. No one can love for you, right? But self-control, discipline, is also the supreme happiness. Because when you become self-disciplined, when you become controlled, when you work towards that, you can become what you want. That can often be a mind at peace, which is pure and at ease and calm and free from delusion and fantasy. And then you can untangle yourself from this endless longing that many people experience. And instead, you don't have to crave or reject anything. You can accomplish that with self-control and effort. So that's why the wise know self-control as one of the gateways to freedom. Freedom, of course, being that internal point where sorrow literally ends. So you get these amazing, promising results from self-control. And in that way, there's really no pleasure that can compare to it. No momentary experience or travel or food or sex or anything like that can compare to the delight, the supreme happiness of discipline and self-control. Even just being around people who are self-controlled, people who are good people, can bring satisfaction. We trust those people instead of erratic people who are up and down, right? And unpredictable and volatile and violent. So self-control and discipline, lifting ourselves up by our own efforts, can be one of the best ways for physical and mental issues to be remedied. It can be like armor that protects you from misery. It can even make food taste better. So that's how self-control is so important, and you work at it. Whatever area of your life you want to improve, you just work at it. And you do your best, and you continue and continue and continue. And you make it simple. The thing about self-control is it's that middle way as well. Not too hard, not too soft. You don't want to exert yourself. Exertion leads to suffering. But laziness and apathy and not being present also leads to suffering. So it's that middle way. Imagine it like a musician who plays the guitar. To tune a guitar, the strings have to be just the right tension. If it's too loose, there's no music. But if it's too tight, the guitar strings pop. So with self-effort, balance it with knowing what's appropriate for you. You know what's right for you. You know what you should do in this life. So don't be too loose about it, but also don't be too hard. Now, inquiry is another way to lift ourselves up. Inquiry is the greatest wisdom. As self-control was the greatest happiness, inquiry is the greatest wisdom. Because through just being inquisitive, what's going on here? How do I make this better? What do I want to do? Asking the question, be willing to explore and to go there and to be honest. In that way, we can purify our mind with high and holy knowledge and wisdom of the wisdom traditions and of the great minds of the world. And through that, we can use this unbroken questioning to liberate our souls from the foul hell of our own mind that we talked about earlier, all that distorted pain that we can get caught up in. So through that process, we become very keen and we're able to realize and see and comprehend and intuit great things. And when you have that vision, it becomes a remedy for overcoming life's problems. So you become strong and your intellect becomes refined and you're very effective in the world and you become very timely in your actions. That's the result of inquiry and this great wisdom. That's the result of inquiring into the nature of things. Who am I? What do I want out of this life? How do I make my life better? What do I need to do today? Simple questions, but by asking them, you get prosperity, enjoyment, and liberation. And that way it protects you from situations that people who are unthinkingly fools fall victim to. People whose minds lack inquiry, they can very easily turn good into bad. And they can imagine problems and create problems everywhere. So without that honesty with yourself, without actually looking at the world around us and inquiring about it, they become a home for sorrow. Unthinkingly, their actions can be harmful to themselves and others, and it can rise to mental illness that comes from internal conflict or stress. In fact, it can be helpful to avoid people who are passengers in their life and don't step up to the plate and work to better themselves. They can drag you down. But you can awaken with inquiry, through inquiry. and you can add wisdom to the world. And you can overcome issues that are created from ignorance. You can see what is changeable and what is not. You can accept what you can change. You can find internal freedom. You can overcome longingness and rejection. And just become freer from those traps of life. Delusion and attachment and laziness and restless action and selfishness and expectation. And labeling everything as good and bad or whatever situation that we talked about potentially earlier. With that wisdom that comes from understanding things and asking questions and inquiring about them, we can even keep foresight and intuition and knowledge while doing normal activities. We've all heard of that opinion of above it while in it. And we can become that way, where we're floating above it all. People who are in it instead of above it are just rolling around in the mud of their own minds. And that's a difficult place to be. We've all experienced that sadness, and it's much better to be poised in wisdom above worldly turmoil. So simply, knowledge arises from self-inquiry, and from knowledge, from true understanding of yourself and the world and other people, tranquility and peace follows. And that leads to the end of sorrow. Thank you again for your love and support and sharing this with your friends and family. I know you know someone who could benefit from this message. And this is all about positive transformation and internal freedom. Together, our hearts and minds can blossom. We can stretch beyond our previous limits. And we're changed forever. We never go back to a more limited way once we know something better. And when we have that positive change, we bring it with us into the world, and we give that gift to every person, potentially, that we meet. That's my dream. That's my heart in this. So believe in yourself, this mission of sharing joy. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share this with your friends. I invite you to support this community and let me know how I can help by leaving a comment. Thank you so much.